And welcome everybody to Rock M Radio. This is a brand new episode of, there we go, Dive Cuts. It's here. We're here. Dive Cuts. I'm your host, Sam Snelling. We're here to talk all things Mizzou Basketball Tigers as the only Mizzou basketball podcast on the interwebs. You'll see if you're watching us on YouTube and you're here live with us, to my right, Matthew J. Harris. And beneath me, at the bottom here is good friend Blake Lovell. Well, you know, you're in Tennessee, so you're relegated to like second-hand status down there.
Geographically, this all makes sense.
Yeah, the Blake Lovell. Blake, how are you, man?
I'm good. This is the first time we really upgraded our worth, I guess, in recent years, because it's the first one we've ever done on video. Back 6-7 years ago, we're doing this on walkie-talkies and trying to communicate that way in our SEC preview. But so we've made it in the world now. So
yeah, we got webcams and fancy mics and all those things. How are things going at the Southeastern 16?
We have 16 teams to cover now. So, I guess the SEC will probably give us 8 more soon. But yeah, it's going. It's been different, I think, to add a few more teams into the mix. And for basketball purposes, I think one of those could be a significant addition. The other, I'm not so sure about just yet. But look, we're getting ready for the grind. This is the overlap. Football's still going. Basketball's ready to go, and should be fun. So,
and everybody is very familiar with Matt. Matt, you doing all right there, bud?
I'm doing well. I'm glad that we're gonna have real, live, honest to God results we have to care about on Monday. So let's get there already. I'm tired of having people divine too much from exhibitions. Let's
I don't
have
understand.
The games to count.
Were you not caring about the Lincoln exhibition that our friend Matt Watkins attended?
I cared insofar as that Matt got to confirm or deny certain things that he thought about the rotation, but that I was not. I didn't have sweaty palms. I'll just say that much. I think I knew what the result was going to be going in.
All right, so let's jump in. I'm sure anybody that is watching this, whether live or not, or listening on the podcast, just want to hear us talk about basketball. We are excited to talk about basketball. Blake, I want to kind of start this with a little bit of a review, since there was a fair amount of let's not do a whole lot of rehashing that happened at the end of last season for Missouri fans and for Missouri podcasters as well. But looking back, as the man who I guess self-proclaimed Dennis Gates fan club president, what happened with the Tigers from your perspective, a little bit of an outside perspective? What's your take on the 0-18, 0-19 season, however you want to phrase it?
Yeah, not exactly the follow-up that I was, probably planning on when I was, the leader of the Dennis Gates fan club. But I think, and you guys have talked about it, and the analytics kind of support it in terms of this team went over, but in all honesty, this wasn't your traditional over type team. And I know there are plenty of fan bases that laugh at me as I've said that over the past however many months now. But I think you just look back at how many close games they were in. The difference, I think this year is they have more, depth. They're able to withstand injuries better. Last year, it was just kind of anything that could go wrong went wrong. And not only that, anything that could go wrong went wrong at the wrong time. And it's just I don't think if you played that season out 100 times, you get that result again, once maybe. I really don't know that it's happened, just based on how everything kind of played that way. And so for that reason, look, yes, they took what they did the first season. You thought they were going to be able to build on it going into last year. But, it's fair to say we still had questions about the roster. I looked at the roster and said, I don't think that roster is as good as the one that they just had. and that was the one that people were picking lower in the SEC, and they just simply, they got the most out of what they had, and it led to a pretty special season. Last year, you were kind of saying, all right, it all kind of has to click together. I don't know if there's a Kobe Brown. I don't know if there's a Des Moines Hodge, and we need these guys to do this or that. And again, it just didn't happen. So blank slate, fresh start. I don't think they're going over this year, but I think the biggest takeaway for me was the record looked awful, but I don't think it was as bad in terms of like looking at them and comparing them to some of the worst teams I've seen in the SEC in, however many years. I don't think that 0 for Missouri team was maybe in the top 5 of that group. And those were teams that won 2 or 3, 4 games. I still think they were better than quite a few of those teams. So
there was no Rick Ray, Mississippi State, or Kim Anderson of Missouri vintage there.
Georgia. I still think that Missouri team beats all those teams. So
Well, and even the other team, most recently who went, defeated through the season, was Bryce Drew's, last year in Nashville, and that team had talent. That was another sort of injury plagued team. They ended up with like several guys who were, at least had something of an NBA career. So it is sort of interesting that it doesn't take much, for a season to kind of get away from you, and then I do think that, once the kind of first half of the season kind of went through, like nobody wanted to be the team that Missouri beat. And so there was a fair amount of like, we're going to make sure we're showing up for this one. And sure enough, a lot of those teams had solid performances, against the Tigers, fortunately for us. They did pivot fairly hard into the off season, signed a very good, transfer portal class. I know that the SEC media is still pretty skeptical on Missouri. One of the things that I kind of talked about, in particular with this Missouri program is when Missouri sort of proven most years to not be good in like the last 10 or 15 years, since joining the SEC, like they're more likely to be in the bottom 4 than not. It's a lot easier to sort of vote the team down at the bottom and then just say, oh, well, we missed that one if they overperform your expectations.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's like, too, it's Mike White said something at SEC Media Day, and coaches have said this before, but like for some reason I just happened to hear it at the right time. And he's like, here's the deal. Like, we're going to be so much better this year. And I'm thinking, he's probably right. I think they're going to be better. But he's like, guess what? Pretty much every other team in the conference may be better too, outside of a couple others. And he's like, we could be so much better, but we may not move up a single spot in the rankings. And he's not wrong. Like, I think that's just kind of the product of how it works now. Because if you're talking about a league where I would say most people that I've seen to this point, and of course it's going to change completely, first month, second month, third month of the season, whatever. But I mean, if I'm seeing 10 teams get projected to make the NCAA tournament from this conference, and most of the time I'm not seeing Missouri in there, and I'm still thinking, man, I don't know about that. Like, I think they're good enough to get there. And right now, I mean, we did our composite staff rankings the other day. I think I had Missouri at 10th, it's like as the team that would be right there kind of in that spot. And I think that's where they wound up in our composite ranking too, because everyone else had them anywhere from, I want to say, maybe 11, 12, something like that. But I don't think we had anybody that had them lower than, I think maybe it may have been 11. It was pretty much 9 to 11. And so to me, though, like that, right, keep in mind, and I hate preseason AP polls. Like I've said this for years, but if there are 9 teams in the SEC in the preseason AP poll, if you're the 10th best team in the SEC, to me, that means you're just on the outside looking into that top, 23 or whatever. I guess Ole Miss was 23rd. Again, it's not going to stay that way. But if that's the expectation, that's just when I look at Missouri, like they could finish whatever, right? Like they could finish anywhere from whatever you think the highest point is. Could they finish 7th to worst case scenario? I'm going to be honest. I don't think worst case scenario is like in the bottom 2 or 3, because I think that's reserved for some other teams that I have my eye on. But I still kind of look at it and feel like there's a lot more room for upward trajectory this year, but it is still kind of what Mike White said. It's everybody else is going to feel that way too. And can you jump enough teams to get back to where they were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, we do the composite rankings at our site, and I think out of 18 outlets, like Missouri's average finish, if you were to rank the average finish for every team in the league was 11th. They were solidly right there with teams like South Carolina and Georgia. Three teams I think we could talk about in various ways that you could look at them and look at those rosters and see how, under the right circumstances, they push for a bid. I think those are three teams that are all sort of probably going to have the same thought process going into the year of, we've probably got a better core than people think we do. And do we have aspirations? Do we think we can push for a double bye? Maybe that's a little outside the realm of possibility. But for those teams, they're going to look at it and say, flip one or two results and we're 8, 9, or 10. And we're going to be right there to push. And you mentioned the range. I mean, you were right on. I mean, their normal range is between 11th and 14th. I mean, I think the one thing I would add is if you go through and you read, from Chris Dortch and Blue Ribbon all the way through, any other outlet, the way people are writing about this team has a big hedge in there. They love the roster. They love the athleticism. They love the depth of scoring here. But there's the question of, are they going to be able to defend and are they going to be able to rebound? And Sam and I have talked about that ad nauseum at times in the offseason. But I think what people have done, and to wrap in Sam's points, they've said they're coming off 0-18. We haven't seen this team consistently defend and rebound. And Missouri has been inconsistent as a program, regardless of its coach. Do we feel comfortable with all that information, picking them higher than 11th? I root for the success of the program, but if I'm objective, I can't really fault people for kind of putting that hedge in place. So I think, but you could say the same thing of, like I just mentioned, Georgia and South Carolina, and even maybe to a team like Ole Miss. I think those are sort of the four teams that I look at and think, man, flip a couple of results and you're going to get some different orders in there. And there are going to be some people that are going to have wildly different sort of views as to how their season went, just based on a couple of results. And you can see that right now, 3 days before the season tips off.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's just like, again, like you said, there aren't a lot of people who are going to go out on a limb and pick the team that went over and all of a sudden say, all right, they're absolutely finishing in the top 5 the next year, unless you just see, the most obvious way of getting them there. And so, yes, like, will I be higher on Missouri this year probably than most people? I'm sure, just because, everyone knows I have the Dennis Gates bias and I've seen what he can do. And I also know that I do think there is certainly blame to be had when you go over, but I don't know that it was entirely his fault last year. And I think that there are some things that simply did not go their way with this year's team. And I'm curious what, I know you guys have talked about this, but if I'm looking 1 through 5, and I'm looking at every position on this Missouri team, how many positions do you think they're better at this year than they were a season ago?
Most of them.
I would agree with that. And
Yeah.
I was curious what you guys would say. I that's kind of what we've been talking about this offseason is I think you can make the argument at almost every single position they're better. And
well, if you look at it all right, so you're starting Tony Perkins at point guard, who's second team All Big Ten, replacing Sean East. For all the good things that Sean East did, I still think that's an upgrade. You're keeping Tamar Bates, at his position. You're upgrading, Nick Honor with very likely, looks like it's probably going to be Caleb Grill starting. So that position is upgraded. You have Mark Mitchell instead of Noah Carter, which, I'm sorry, like, yes. And then whatever they were trying to do at the 5, like, and this is just like projecting starters. I think we're kind of expecting them to at least, begin a lot of games with Josh Gray. At Josh Gray at worst as an entry level sort of replacement starter at center, which I'm not sure Missouri had last year. So yeah, I think all 5 positions they've upgraded.
Yeah. So, I mean, that says a lot in my opinion. So, I mean, and that's where, like, if you get anything close this year to what you had last year, record wise, like, absolutely, like that's not good, because I do think that they are so much better and have more room for error this year. Whereas last year, it became very obvious very quickly that there just was not any room for error for this team last year. But now that they built up a little depth, you can withstand, again, an injury or two that you know is inevitable throughout a season. I think that's the biggest strength, I think, of this team is that they've upgraded in a lot of spots. And even if, let's say, one or two of those guys don't pan out the way you think you're going to, I still think they've got players around them that are going to come off the bench that still gives this team a bit of a higher profile than they had last year.
The one thing I think you get to is just look at it. You talk about the overall upgrade of positions. Go look at the 247 overall recruiting rankings and look at the teams that Missouri is in close proximity to. Arkansas and Texas. Arkansas is picked 4th, essentially, and Texas is picked around 7th. Missouri is, sitting in 13th. To me, that's a referendum almost on the coach that's, helming the job there. So if you're looking at Dennis, Rodney Terry, we saw him coming in a tough interim situation and take a team on a deep run. We've seen Cal's track record, obviously. Again, if you're a writer and you're looking at 3 teams that objectively have similar talent levels and you're picking Missouri 9 spots behind Kentucky, what you're saying is, I have doubts about the staff and the head coach's ability to maximize that. And look, I think we've interacted with Dennis, we've interacted with their staff. He's an incredibly sharp guy, gets basketball, has great ideas about how he wants to play, and I think does a good job teaching it. The question's going to be, do the results match that ability? I think it's an open question, but at the same time, we've had 2 wildly extreme examples here.
Right.
So I think again, you come back to, if you are someone who's trying to be level-headed and rational and projecting this team and where it's going to finish, you've got 2 wild, out seasons at opposite ends of the bell curve. You've got talent level that's comparable to Texas and Arkansas, but where do you slot it? So I think if someone were to say to me, do you think that there's been a disrespect, or do you think people have undervalued Missouri? No, I think people have got the right sort of thing. I think they're essentially walking it up to the edge of the bubble. I think if you're saying that they're at 11th in average finish, it's a lot of people saying, yeah, we think they could be right there on the bubble.
Yeah.
So we'll see if they can push their way on. But I think people see what he's done from a roster building perspective, and they just want to see tangible proof that he can extract the results that are equivalent to that talent.
Well, I've had this question on the bottom of the screen a little longer than because it is where I thought we were kind of pivoting a little bit and kind of stuck on Missouri. Yeah. But I want to present it kind of like this, because I think that, and I realize that I'm with some like-minded people. I realize that there's analytics sites that are in love with the SEC this year. There's a whole lot of people that really think the SEC, has a shot to be the best conference in basketball. In order to do that, the bottom of the league has to be better than it's been in pretty much every year since it expanded. And so what I want to sort of put you, and we'll start with Blake, in the position, you're the SEC basketball commissioner, and you're going to sit down with every coach and talk about their season expectations. And then you have to deliver the bad news of, to how many coaches that maybe their season isn't going to be an NCAA tournament, that they should be pretty happy if they can finish not in the last place. How many programs are you having that conversation with?
I think honestly, to me, there are only right now, if I'm I could sit down with this coach and he's give me the argument for why you think I'm going to make the NCAA tournament. I'd have a hard conversation with probably 2 or 3 coaches. And again, I'm not going to reveal those names, but I would have it'd be a hard sell in my opinion.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I could probably give you a pretty strong argument and say the other 13 coaches, I feel like at least half of you, if you don't make the NCAA tournament, it is a very big disappointment. And I think for probably at least half of those teams that are remaining, wherever we're at in the math at that point, if you don't make the second weekend of the tournament, it's disappointing. And so I realistically believe that. Like, I think that 13 teams, and look, there could be someone that says, you know what, give me that 14th team too, and say that, again, not saying they're all going to make it, but that should be the goal. That should be the expectation. And I don't, and it's funny because I've made this argument this offseason. I'm like, I don't remember a year where we've been able to say the same thing, but then I'm like, well, we also picked South Carolina 14th last year and thought they had absolutely no chance of doing anything. So if you take it from that perspective, then there probably is going to be a team that of that, let's say, group of 3 that all of a sudden is way better than maybe we expected. And maybe there's a team from that other 13 that all of a sudden is not. And, last year that was South Carolina in the good way. It was Missouri in a bad way. And so, it's inevitable that probably happens. But I think right now, getting 10 teams into the NCAA tournament is a very realistic possibility. And like you said, it is going to, you've got to have those teams. And look, the 10th team is probably, maybe in Dayton. But still, I mean, it's 10 teams. And yeah. I think it's because like we said earlier, if you have 9 that are starting in the preseason top 23 for whatever it's worth, we're not used to that. I mean, that's just not something we've seen a whole lot in the SEC. So, so I would say 13 would be the number. And again, there's probably 3 teams that it would take me a while to try to sell someone on those teams making the tournament right now.
Mr. Harris, do you have more courage than Mr. Lovell and to actually name who you think you're going to have that conversation with? Because I don't have a problem with it.
South Carolina, Oklahoma, LSU.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm going 14. I think 14 teams are teams that I think can have a realistic expectation of being in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. Not necessarily making the tournament, but they could realistically be on the bubble. And I agree with you. I think South Carolina, I really, really just, unless they get something otherworldly from like Cam Scott, which, is hard to expect a freshman to do that. As much as I love Colin Murray Boyles, them and LSU, I think are in for a tough season. But Oklahoma, man, Porter's going to guard, they're going to guard. And they've got a lot of experience on that roster, and
then they drift.
And that's the mix that worked for South Carolina last year. Was they defended and they had old guys.
And
it did. I mean, you're not wrong, but
Oklahoma is also a team under Porter that has faded. It will start well. It will be feisty early in Big 12 play, and then about mid to late January, the talent gaps begin to show, and then they begin to fade. And this is a roster where, man, if you're talking about pumping possessions through Jeremiah Fears, I got questions about where you are. You're small at the point guard position. You don't have a true 5.
Yeah, they are.
Your wings are guys that are all transferring up and were role players at mid majors. I mean,
they are planning on starting Fears and Duke Miles at the 1 and 2. And I thought originally Duke Miles was going to be their starting point guard.
I'm just saying, you're smaller. You're relying on a freshman to play heavy minutes. Your guys that have to deliver support on the wings are up transfers. I think if you look at every guy's gonna have to stretch their usage 2-3% to get you there. And look, I have no doubt that Porter's going to get him to guard and that they're going to be able to pick some people off. But, their best returner was Jalen Moore, who was their 4th or 5th option last year. And, Duke Miles is a good point guard, and I think he can be kind of a player that I think can have good nights for you. But I just have questions about the overall quality of the roster at this point with them. LSU, you and I have talked about it. They just probably took 2 or 3 guys less in the transfer portal than they needed to help them. And they're really, I have respect for Matt McMahon because he's going to try and do this the old way and grow his high school guys into a core. And then I don't know if South Carolina has enough.
It could work for Colin. It could work at LSU, just probably next year.
Those are the 3 conversations I'm having. And then watch Vanderbilt.
It's okay. I was about to say, I was going to bring up Vanderbilt because I've been hot and cold on them. Like I was all in on
you're a
them.
Nashville guy. I will say Johnny Wright going down or whatever's going on with him. I can't. Yeah, it changed the math a little bit for me.
Yeah,
I think the front court depth is my biggest question mark for them. But I also could absolutely see the scenario where they are out there going 6'4", 6'1", 6'4", 6'7", 6'7", and shooting 43s, giving up 90, but also scoring 91. Like I absolutely can see them winning games that way.
It's basically the 2023 Missouri Tigers.
Yes, there you go.
Team.
Like
empty clip team.
A very wide range, I feel like, for this first team he has here in Nashville. But I'm not out on them either, and they would not have probably been part of my, my three that I was leaving out. So yeah, we'll see though. I changed my mind on them a lot. So
I could see it going really, really badly, but I just don't think it's going to. Like it's one of those things. Like if I were betting, I'd feel like I'd have them more bottom four. But I really kind of think they could be a fun team and win, 7 or 8 games in league play and scare a lot of teams and
they're gonna
just have it's kind of like I was mentioned over text, just have an absolute like flamethrowers offensively and if it goes that way, then I mean it's going to be a fun season. Well, so let's start looking from the bottom and let's go to the top. And you mentioned the number of teams that you sort of thought if they don't make the second weekend, it's going to be a disappointment. I feel you're probably more comfortable talking about those teams openly.
Alabama's in that group.
Right. Like I feel like if Alabama doesn't make a Final Four, it's probably going to be disappointing for them.
I would agree.
I think Auburn has Final Four aspirations. I'm probably higher. Like I'm not like JJ Metz high on Arkansas, but I do think Arkansas is going to finish top 4. I just like Cal. Like I really think Cal is a good basketball coach and he's going to figure that team out. But who is your group? Auburn, Alabama. I'm assuming. Who's next on disappointing if they don't make a Sweet 16?
I think it's Arkansas. Like I'm drinking the Arkansas Kool-Aid at this point. We did our composite rankings. Everyone had Arkansas 4 or 5, I want to say. I moved Arkansas all the way to 2. And I haven't swapped Alabama and Auburn at all the entire offseason. And I didn't do this after watching the exhibition game. I did it before, which again, exhibitions are what they are, but I think there's something there in terms of
beat Purdue last year.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what listen, when we released our composite ranking, and you can go find the comments, we've had 12,000 plus views on this video. I'm pretty sure 75% are Arkansas fans telling us we're absolutely nuts for having them at 4th in our composite ranking. Again, I ranked them 2nd, but they finished 4th in the composite ranking. So you can tell they're ready to go here in the Cal era. I think if you're looking at it from a pure talent standpoint, and I know Cal is still the person that you're going to look at and say, all right, we've said this so many times with him. He's always had the talent. It's just, can he put it all together? For some reason, I just think that this group is going to mesh pretty well together. And I know they're going to have to rely on some freshmen to do that in an era, especially this year, kind of, the last stand in terms of all these teams that have grad transfers and seniors and guys who've been there for 7-8 years now, it seems like. They're going to have to play some freshmen to get there, but I think those freshmen are pretty good. And, I think DJ Wagner at full strength, last year, I mean, there were times where we're like, man, that guy's one of the best players at his position in the country, but, injuries and all that kind of stuff just really kind of limited what he could do. I think the front court is obviously very intriguing. You're banking on potential with a couple of those guys, but I don't know. I really like this team. And, I have the question with them that I have with quite a few other SEC teams, which is not outside the norm. How well are they going to shoot the ball? But I'm probably too high on them at 2. But I do think, like you said, Sam, I think they're finishing in the top 4. And I think they should absolutely be disappointed if they're not in the top 4.
Matt, who are your
They're gonna
disappointing?
guard? They're going to guard?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Like, we've established at Southeastern 16 that I don't really care if teams guard. I just want them to score. I don't care. It is. I think Missouri kind of spoiled me a couple of years ago.
They've had a top 2 offense in the SEC the last 3 years, and they don't guard.
Well,
I want to hear people stop
You're speaking of Cal's
offense.
teams. Yeah, Cal's teams.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
I mean,
guard.
I get it, but
and
I
DJ
feel
Wagner,
good.
what did DJ Wagner not do last year? DJ Wagner didn't guard.
Well, that's okay. They're going to score points.
What did Big Z not do last year?
Big Z does not defend. At least I do defends.
Well,
I do also hunts blocks. And
listen,
gets out of position.
They're going to use the Missouri model. All right, top 10 offense, sub 150 defense, and ride it all the way.
Look, if Cal gets him to guard the way that Cal got, teams a couple of years ago to defend, I'll buy the argument on Arkansas. This team's gotten worse defensively over the last 3 years. Guard. Sit down.
For what
guard.
It's worth, I have picked Arkansas to finish second in this league probably 4 years in a row. They completely burned me last year, and yet I'm back here again. Like, I am riding with the Hawks.
Year in your defense.
So
a lot of people got burned last year by the Hogs. Top 4 for me, Alabama. We'll start there. I another team. Every other Nate Oates team decides it wants to defend. This is a year where Nate Oates will probably care about defense. He's got enough depth. The Omar Rui pickup lets him move his guys back. Stevenson and Nelson to play at the 4. He's got enough guard depth. Even if Youngblood's out, they've got enough shooting, I think, to get him through to the SEC play. If they guard even average, I like them. And there's this fun factoid. The team picked to win the SEC in the preseason has never finished lower than 4th. Never happened. So I feel pretty good that Bama is going to be in the top 4 there. Auburn, I've got questions about what happens if they lose Janai Broome, but that's a worst case scenario. Bruce gets his guys to sit down and guard consistently. He gets transfer guards to play more efficiently. So I feel better about a pickup like Miles Kelly, slotting in there. Tennessee, same thing. Rick Barnes, he's like a savings bond. His guys are going to play defense. They're going to rebound. They're going to do that well enough to probably finish in the top 4. So those are my top 3. I think Alabama's got the depth, and I think they'll be able to defend at an average level this year. Auburn, Tennessee, you can generally trust Bruce and Rick to put together good teams and consistent teams, at least on one end of the floor. But then I think where it got squishy for me was, do you look at A&M in 4th? I really dislike A&M's style of play and how they go about doing it. It feels very high risk, high reward for them. I just railed on Arkansas as to whether they were going to give a crap about defense. And then, do you think Mark Pope can get Kentucky in year 1 to a top 4? Sam wrote this in our preview about Florida. Do you think Florida can are they at their ceiling at 4th or 5th? Like, 4th place for me is really just the squishiest spot. I think there's a solid top 3, but then you can make an argument for 4 or 5 teams behind them and that's, again, to Blake's point earlier, that's the depth of this league. There are a handful of teams that are going to say, yeah, 4th place, that's us. That's us.
Who's the most likely to fall out of the top 3 of? I've got
my
Blake seems to be a little bit of an outlier.
I'll let you go
Arkansas
on that.
too.
I'm curious.
Because
Blake, who do you think is the most likely to drop out?
I think it's Tennessee.
I
do not trust them on the offensive side of the floor. And again, this is not an exhibition reaction. Like, I know they shot 30%. Chaz Lanier went 3 of 16 from the floor, and I'm looking up like, here it is again. But even before that was if you'd asked me my biggest worry, it was, what are they going to do to score the ball? I like Zakai Ziegler. I like Jemai Meshack. They are the best defensive duo in the country. I don't know that I want to necessarily put all the pressure on them scoring wise. And I know they brought Lanier in to be that guy. Is he going to be Dalton Connect? I don't know about that.
No.
Like if that was the plan, that was a questionable plan. I think it's interesting to me, like, we kind of get in this mode where you get in like the off-season hype mode where you find these guys at low majors or mid majors and think they're going to come up and Dalton, what Dalton Connect did was not normal. Like guys don't do that. Okay. Like you bring a guy up, you tweak some things, you give him fewer possessions, you give him fewer minutes, and you try to make him a more efficient version of basically what he was down a level. Guys don't scale up like Dalton Connect did. So if Lanier is, a guy who's going to be a catch and shoot guy, he's going to be their secondary shooter, off of, whatever other action that they're able to sort of generate, then I'll feel a lot better. But if they're, looking for him to sort of replace what the production that connected, and I feel like I would agree with you that they're the most likely team to sort of fall out, of the sort of that top group.
I just don't know front court wise. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Matt, like quickly, like front court wise, like what are they getting scoring wise beyond? Like I know Milicic's there, like Okpara is more of a defensive guy. Like, I mean, that's what
we love Okpara, like, but as a defender,
I like him too.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Protector,
yeah. They got for Adu. The proactive.
I would give Adu a big bump of offense over Okpara. Like Okpara is.
I'm saying on the defensive end, it's a like for like swap defensively.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Them. I think the argument for Tennessee, and this is the best case for them, is Dubar's got 3 years of being a really good catch and shoot guy. He's going to be your spacer, so that's going to be your Dalton spacer guy. He's going to take Dalton's catch and shoots. You're going to have Chaz Lanier as kind of your second side guy who might hunt some pull-ups. He's going to be able to maybe do some relocation shooting. He's going to take that from Connect, and you're going to be able to, between those two guys, to split that production out. Milicic is a guy that I love. He's super skilled as a 5. He can give you some different things. He's going to be the one that, can sort of give you the offense that Okpara lacks. So that's the proactive case there.
Yeah.
Now, I think if the plan was to have Chaz Lanier be the 100% swap, that was a terrible choice because Dalton Connect had from JUCO to Northern Colorado to Tennessee. He had shown consistency in scaling up his production. You had 3 years of watching him from a JUCO frosh to a JUCO sophomore to a Division I junior move his production up. So if you thought, last year obviously surprised us all, but if you looked at it, he had been a guy who had shown steady progression. Chaz Lanier had a bust out last year, but his first 2 years were pretty forgettable. Like there hasn't been a consistency of production with Chaz. Now that doesn't mean that he can't, do it again this year, but I'm always a little skeptical of mid to low major guys who have one big breakout season and that don't necessarily show you a pretty consistent, trajectory of development. I do wonder about those guys sometimes being a little bit more boom bust. So I could see that being the case with Tennessee. And if that does happen, then I'm not going to be shocked if they drop a couple of spots. I think that's totally within the realm possibility.
Yeah, I think like that's sort of the danger, and it's been the danger, especially like, one of the things, and I think we kind of talked about this with Missouri. One of the mistakes that I think Missouri made was thinking that the league was going to stay the same. That basically what they saw 2 years ago was going to be repeated the next year. And what happened is a whole lot of other teams went out and got better offensively. And, that includes Tennessee basically importing one guy, but other teams looking around and saying, we're going to get better offensively and trust that we can kind of, hold the line defensively. And they did. Like even Mississippi State was a better offensive team than they were. Yeah. And so if you continue to sort of make this progression and you look at it, like, all right, things aren't going to be the same. At some point, like Rick is going to have to figure out how his teams are going to score the ball efficiently. And this is also going to help me kind of pivot to what I want to get to next, which is like our sort of, the middle ground. there's only like so many times you can do the same thing, right? And it's like we know Zakai Ziegler, we know Jemai Mashak, like we know those guys are going to be good defenders, but they haven't proven to you yet that they can score. It's like the same thing with Santi Vescovi. It's the same thing with Josiah Jordan-James. Those guys were always really good players, but they weren't really like plus offensive players. And it wasn't until they got, a core Dalton Connect that they were able to take off. So that is going to help me pivot to what I want to get to next, which is our soft middle. Teams that, we have questions about. Obviously, they're going to be what we are picking is kind of in the middle of the league. And the team that I kind of want to start and lead with and why this is a good pivot is Chris Beard is bringing back Jamin Brakefield and Matthew Morrell, two guys who have been a part of a whole lot of bad teams in Oxford. Blake, tell me why it's going to be different for these guys this season, and Ole Miss is going to be dancing.
Yeah, I've been higher and higher on Ole Miss as the offseason has progressed. And I think, obviously having those guys back helps because they played a lot of basketball. Like you said, they play a lot of basketball on teams that have not exactly had the most success in the league. And so you can wonder, okay, is it going to finally come together? But I just like the way he put the roster together. Like, I like the addition of a Sean Padula at point, knowing that you still have Murray there. You've got, I think Malik Dia comes in, who I'm very high on. Of course, he started at Vanderbilt, went to Belmont, had a ridiculous season, all that. I think this team feels a little bit more like a Chris Beard type team. I'm not going to say this isn't going to be vintage Texas Tech or anything like that. I don't think just yet, but I can understand why the upside seems higher for a lot of people with this team. And again, that's why they were voted in the top 25 in the preseason for whatever that's worth. And they may still be the 9th best team in the SEC or the 10th best team in the SEC. But I think if I'm picking one of these teams in this group, and if we're putting Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Texas, I don't know where Florida maybe falls in this range somewhere. Like in terms of like just overall ups, I think Florida's probably in that mix too. I know it's not a popular thing, but like I also am not as convinced as Texas A&M is going to just all of a sudden sneak up and win the league, because what I keep reminding myself is they were 15-13 last year entering March, and they just happened to win some games two against Ole Miss, not a great team, one against Georgia. And sure, they started playing better towards the end of the season, but I don't know. I want to see consistency from A&M. So I could even consider putting them at the high end of this category. But, I mean, does Ole Miss have the highest upside of that group? I'm higher on Texas than most people are. I've been told many times I'm way too high on Texas. But I like the roster. And that's all I have to go on right now. Like, it's just the roster that's there. And, I like the guard play potentially of Texas and all that, but I could make the argument that Ole Miss finishes in the top 5 in the SEC if this is the year where they figure some things out defensively. Now, the problem, I will quickly remind myself, is this. I still don't think that non-conference schedule is going to do a whole lot for them. Whereas last year, it was kind of the same thing, right? Like they started great. Non-con wasn't great. This year, I look at their non-conference schedule. I have to pull it up again because I get it all mixed together, and I'm like, BYU, Louisville should be better. At Memphis, about it. So I mean, maybe it's a little better than it was last year. I don't know how much we're going to learn about them going into SEC play, and will that hurt them again? But I do think this team is better. And I don't know, a little bit older, got a lot of. I just think, like, come on, like we got to get Matt Morrell a big season, right? He's been there long enough now. Let's just get this guy on a team that's going to finally, make a run in the NCAA tournament or something. So trying to will it into existence.
So that's kind of my skepticism is, I feel like we've been waiting for Ole Miss to break out, and I, like, as much as I think there's a respect, and I assume there's respect for Chris Beard in this podcast, like, Ole Miss is not Texas, even Texas Tech, and there are a lot of things that have changed since he was taking Texas Tech to the Final Four. He hasn't fielded a very good defense in recent seasons. His performance has kind of gone up and down. And yeah, like they put together a really nice team that Rodney Terry took to the Elite Eight. Before he was fired. But I also have questions about what that entire situation and all the things that he dealt with, through dealing with Texas is sort of, going to impact the job that he's still doing, and whether or not, he's still the same Chris Beard. Because I wrote in my Ole Miss preview something, akin to kind of comparing him to Icarus, who, flew too close to the sun, his wings melted, he plunged into the sea and drowned. And so that's the allegory. And I think there's a connection there that maybe it would have been better. And I even said this at the time, it probably would have been better for Chris Beard to sit out. Mm-hmm. Just take a year off, bro. And figure out what went wrong. And he just hopped right back into the pool. And last year didn't go great. I think he's a good basketball coach. I like the talent on the roster, but I've liked talent on Ole Miss rosters before, and they've been disappointing. So that's if there's a team of this whatever 14 that we're talking about, that's the team that I'm probably holding my breath the most on.
Mm-hmm.
I think A&M drops. They're going to pump a ton of touches through Wade Taylor. If he doesn't make shots, they're going to send a lot of bodies to the glass and hope to get.
Well, they were 9-9 last year too, right?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you can look at. I think I looked at this. You can explain a lot of Buzz Williams' performance in College Station based on how A&M performs in close games. It's eerie. Their record changes based on what they do in close games. And anybody who looks at analytics long enough will tell you one of the things that is the hardest to predict, is basically unpredictable, almost completely random, is performance in close games. You can be great one year, same roster can come back, outcome can be totally different next year. We saw that last year. They were really great 2 years ago in close games, got them to second. Last year, they were pretty average, and they finished 9-9. And what did Buzz do this offseason? He went out and just got transfers who were basically mirror images of the guys he lost. He's going to try the same thing again. I'm not sure that if Wade Taylor's not cooking, that he's got enough reliable offensive pieces. Zurich Phelps is kind of a gunner and a heavy volume guy. They have maybe some shooting with the guy they brought in from Nebraska. Wilcher. They brought in Wilcher. They're going to have some bigs that are going to crash the glass. Henry Coleman's kind of a good roller and cutter and finisher. Make the case for me that this team is going to be able to come down and run offense and get consistent scoring off the first action they run, as opposed to just crashing a glass or getting to the foul line. I've got real questions there about them. I've got questions about Texas's front court, and in their back court, they have three guys who do kind of all the same thing. Are they going to just take turns with Pope, Mark, and Johnson for who gets to be the guy playing in iso ball? What are they going to do? I don't know. I think A&M and Texas to me are kind of the ones that have the biggest questions. I want to believe in Ole Miss because I like that Chris looked at his front court and said, I had three dudes last year who couldn't do anything for me offensively. So he went out and he got two bigs that are skilled. They might not also be centers, so they're going to be small. And is that going to affect them, in terms of, what they do on the back line? Because his best teams have always had kind of a good anchor that have allowed his teams to play more aggressive out at the front and around the perimeter. But you can go through and you can punch holes in a lot of these teams in the middle. But I think to me, A&M just is like an organizing principle for how they want to play basketball is the one I think is it's like being a sit and kick runner. I'm just going to stay and hang back, and maybe I'll have enough to eke out a win at the finish line. And I just don't know if that kind of basketball is what you can play to really make a push and sort of contend for a top 4 or even for a conference title. So I'm really skeptical about what A&M does. Now watch them go like 8-2 in 5-point games or something crazy this year. And people be like, how dare you doubted them? I'm like, nobody could predict it. But A&M's the one that gets the biggest for me at this point.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I want to kind of get to here, and that is actually making us say who we think is going to make the NCAA tournament. So let's start with a simple question. There's some projections out there that have the SEC getting 10 teams in. That's a lot of teams to get in. Would be a league record, I believe. Blake, does the SEC get 10 teams in?
Yes. I think one of them's in Dayton. Yep. I'm going to go yes. One's in Dayton. The others are flying high somewhere around the country.
Okay. Matt, yes?
Yes.
All right. We got 3 yeses. 3 yeses, 10 teams in the NCAA tournament. So we have to name now the 10. So I'm going to kind of go through. I'm going to go through my picks just because I've got the SEC article up here that Matt published today. So as I'm scrolling, we're going to start with Alabama. Is Alabama going to make the NCAA tournament? Everybody?
Yes.
Affirmative.
Is Auburn going to make the NCAA tournament? Everybody? Yes.
Yes.
Tennessee?
Yes.
Yes.
Arkansas?
Yes.
Yes.
I've got Florida at 5th. Does Florida make the NCAA tournament?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Kentucky. Mark Pope, first year. We haven't really talked about them at all. No real stars, all transfers.
I
will say yes.
The boosters spin it well. I'll say I put them in.
All right. I'm gonna skip the hometown team. So I've got Missouri at 7. So we're not gonna bring them up. Ole Miss. Blake, is Ole Miss gonna make the NCAA tournament? We're getting hard now because this is gonna be 7. We're at 7.
I know, because I got to start thinking of who I'm leaving out if I insert Ole Miss. Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
All right. Boy, that's tough. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they miss. Texas A&M. Blake?
Yes.
All right. I agree. I think they get in. I've got them going 9-9. They went 9-9 3 of the last 4 or 3 of the last 4 years. Yeah. The other year they went 15-3. So, all right. So now we're
close game luck.
So I've got everybody except Ole Miss. We are at 8. Texas Longhorns.
Yes.
All right. 9. Mississippi State Bulldogs.
No.
All right.
No.
So you're leaving a spot open. You're both leaving a spot open. I'm going to say
I don't feel good about that one, but I know there's a team I have to put in there, and I had to trade them for someone. So maybe I'll take 11 teams and put Mississippi State back in Dayton again. How about that? No.
All right. So the Missouri Tigers.
I will say yes.
So you guys are a yes. I'm yes on that. I've got them higher. So we are leaving out Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Georgia.
That's the one where I probably would have been. I would have entertained. I would have entertained Georgia.
More than Vanderbilt. I would feel better about Vanderbilt if they had any reasonable size. But
yeah, I like Georgia. I would look if Missouri doesn't make the tournament. I to me, it's Georgia, Mississippi
that's
State, and I'm struggling with who I'm picking, but I think Georgia's right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Yeah.
So
if Demery and the guards come along, I like them. If the sophomores do what they need to do, I like them.
Yeah. Mississippi State. They're a team that I don't like the roster, but it's one of those things, and I feel like there's a lot of people that are kind of doing this, and that's sort of just like trusting that Chris Jans is going to figure out. Like, why is there that much faith in Chris Jans? They've been 8-10 in the conference 2 years in a row and snuck into the NCAA tournament, and yet we're anointing somebody who has a below 500 record in the SEC as being trustworthy.
I think people are going to say he's going to put a defense together, but that defense was based on having an absolute group of maulers on the front line.
I think you're getting called out here in the comments, Blake.
Well, I mean, listen, this is Big Baller Brett for no one. It's a noted Alabama fan who comes in all the time when the Tide are doing good and he's having a lot of fun. When they're not doing good, he's coming in, taking shots at everybody else. So it's okay, Big Baller Brett.
You should be happy then.
Basketball in the state of Alabama this year is where it's at. Hadn't been the case for football. So.
I don't like the front line for State.
Yeah,
the guards might be a group of malcontents.
We're going to start. Well, that's another tough thing is Kanye Clary is talented, but got kicked off the team at Penn State. And you have a guy who was sort of highly rated and came in and was one of the best freshmen in the country last year. I do think
Kugel whines a lot.
Yeah, and that's Riley Kugel on the wing. RJ Melendez has been good at sort of just being a guy at multiple different stops. Like, I'm not really sure that like they have a lot of players that I trust, but at the guard spot, Josh Hubbard's pretty dang good.
He's going to hand out buckets.
Yeah, and I think
shots.
that's the challenge there is.
And that could be the problem because some guys might not like that on the bench.
Just such a different team.
He flipped his. I think that's the thing. He everyone's been like Chris Jans has gotten teams in. He completely flipped his roster construction, and then the guys he's banking on, 2 of them have had personality questions. It feels like.
I feel like he got really impatient, and I feel like I wrote this in my preview for them. It feels like he got impatient trying to find answers on the interior, and he just went and got guys like Jeremy Fumina really was replacement level at Rhode Island, and not even that. Like he wasn't playing at Rhode Island, and you're gonna play him in the SEC. Keyshawn Murphy, a guy who, Nwoko at Miami was largely forgotten about. Like I don't know that they have a whole lot of answers on the interior. If they go small, like Cam Matthews is awesome. You play him at the 5, I guess.
Plays his ass off. He's going to rebound. He's going to defend.
Just play small, and then you've got 5'11", 5'10", and 6'2" as your 1 through 3. Just absolutely.
But if he gets in foul trouble in a game, though, I'm looking at this and I'm like, what do they do?
Yeah. Well, let's wrap this up with more Missouri discussion, because I think at least Blake, I know that this is hard for you to believe. This is a Missouri podcast.
Yes.
And I do kind of want to talk about what we sort of see as the absolute floor and the absolute ceiling. Evan Mia had a really sort of interesting thing where he ran a bunch of simulations, and the ceiling for Missouri sort of peaked out, I think, around 17th. I would be quite thrilled if that's the season that we had. That would mean that Dennis finally decided to get a team to defend and rebound and all that kind of exciting stuff, as well as being able to score the basketball. So what do you think is a reasonable ceiling? And if everything does go wrong, like what's the floor for this team?
Well, I mean, if I'll start with the bad first, like if everything goes wrong, do I think they're finishing at the bottom? I don't. Like, I still think that, again, comparing them to a couple other teams, and we've already mentioned those, whether it's Oklahoma, LSU, let's say Vanderbilt's front court size does catch up with them and they don't score the way we think they can. I could see Vanderbilt finishing there. South Carolina, I like to give Lamont Paris the benefit of the doubt after that season, but I also think this is such a different team that it was maybe I was more overlooking some things last year than I am this year, just because I see one star and then I just see a lot of question marks in terms of like how they're going to put it all together. So because of that, I think Missouri, just based on the talent and roster, if I'm just comparing rosters across the board, I mean, I don't know that I would put them lower than 12th. And maybe, maybe Georgia isn't what we think they are. Maybe they slide backwards and we're just like, oh man, it just never came together for Georgia. In all honesty, like I can absolutely tell you right now, I think overall, I could certainly say Missouri's roster is just better than Georgia's right now. But that's on paper, and that's what I'm seeing. And when I compare the two, so I'll say 12 is probably as low as I would go for Missouri right now. And in terms of like how high can they go? And look, it's impossible for me to not have Auburn, Alabama. Even with some of the questions I have about Tennessee, like I said, I mean, they're going to defend. I can't see Tennessee falling lower than, let's say, maybe 6th at worst, something like that. Arkansas, yes, I'm high on Arkansas, but could I see them struggling and falling a little back? Sure. So I'll say with Missouri, like I could see them finishing 5th, 6th, probably, if everything goes perfect. Because I could move a couple of those. We talked about, you mentioned, Sam, like just that team, those teams in the middle, Florida, Kentucky, maybe A&M, Texas, like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, like teams like that are just feel like they're kind of a jumbled mess maybe for some people. I can certainly say, like, I could see all those teams, like Matt said, they've got potential holes. And if they, can't sort of take advantage of some of those strengths that they have and their weaknesses get exploited, I can see them finishing behind Missouri. So maybe they are able to move up to 5, 6, something like that. So,
Mr. Harris, you have a take on that?
I think the floor is reasonable. Where he said, we're Gabe, not Gabe. Don't know why I said Gabe. Where it's been said here. My question, I think I'll probably have a little lower ceiling on them, just because I think I'm skeptical, of what they're going to do defensively until I see them do it. And you look at the teams that are in front of them that I think you trust to guard. You trust Auburn. You trust Tennessee. You trust A&M. Florida's pretty solid defensively. So that's 5 or 6 teams that I think, I think Alabama's got the potential to be really good defensively. So that's 5 or 6 teams that I think right now that I think are there, that I trust their defenses enough. And, I think they've got comparable talent offensively to be there, and I think to me where it gets tough is, do you like this team more than you like Texas? That's the one that I think you come down. Do you like this team more than you like Ole Miss? All those teams I think have pertinent questions. A lot of it around their front courts and how effectively they're going to be able to defend. To me, I'd set the ceiling probably closer to like 8th or 9th. And plus, historically, that's typically what teams in Missouri's region of the preseason poll do. One usually jumps up and gets to 8th or 9th. I think if they do that, that's probably a 10-8 season. They've overperformed by 2 or 3 wins. They're probably guarding about average, which will be an improvement over where they've been. And I think if they got to 7th or 8th, I think that would be a really, really good season for them, given where, the baseline.
I'm not talking about like a good season. We're talking about the ceiling here.
Ceiling to me, maybe I don't know if I could put them past Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee at this point. I think those 3 are set.
I think
Arkansas wants to
a 4th finish, kind of like what happened a couple years ago, where they slip into via like a tiebreaker. Like I could kind of see something like that.
Maybe.
Do you think they can win 12 games?
I think so. I think they can get to 12. I think the schedule sets up well.
I think if you're at 12 games, and you're probably in the 4 seed conversation.
Yeah. The schedule sets up well for them. I think to get there. I think they get. I can look at the schedule. I have it right here. Like I look at it as can they get a home win over Arkansas? Can you pick off a road win at Texas? Can you go into Mississippi State and get a win? Can you go to Georgia and get a win? Like I'm looking at games right now where they're picked to lose. They're picked to lose at Texas. Can you flip that game? You're picked to lose at Mississippi State. Can you flip that game? Picked to lose at Georgia. Can you flip that game? Models have them losing at Oklahoma. Can you flip that game? If you flip those 4, you're at 10 or 11 wins. So I think it's there for them. I think the schedule, particularly down the stretch, sets up well for them. The run in is really nice. They get South Carolina at home, Vandy away, OU away, Kentucky at home. I mean, the last 5 for Missouri, I was going to, and if I had to write a preview, I'd say the thing for Missouri to do is to be sitting there at 6-6, 5-5, 6-6 as you get ready to come down the stretch, because there's some winnable games. I think that's the floor where you got to be, and you can make a nice push to get in. But they can get to 12, but it's going to take them flipping maybe some road games that right now are a little bit on the line for them. So we'll see what they can do. But I'd say, where Blake's at the floor is reasonable. I might be a little lower on the ceiling, but I think it could get to 12 wins.
So here's basically like, my pecking order, and I have LSU and South Carolina in the basement, but I do have them each winning 5 games. I do think that the bottom of the SEC is better. I've got Georgia at 6-12. I think their ceiling is probably 10 wins. I could see them maybe getting to 11 if things go well, but I think probably somewhere between 6 and 10. But then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams between 7-11 and 11-7. And so like picking out the order for me was difficult because I had to figure out tiebreakers. Missouri is in 7 through tiebreakers. They get Texas A&M at home. They get Ole Miss at home, and I had them winning both those games at home. So because of that, they got the tiebreaker, and they're in 7th.
No reason.
That's kind of where. So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of my preseason picks, and maybe you guys can support me on this, where I feel like I'm almost kind of hedging a fair amount of bets, because I do think that the depth of the league is going to come down, like success is going to come down to, can you win this road game here? Can you win this home game here? And the difference between being like 13th and being 6th is going to be, 4 results. And if you can go 3 in one of those results, then you're dancing easy. If you go 2 and 2, you're probably sweating a little bit. You go 1 and 3, maybe you still get in. You go 0 and 4, and you're hoping the NIT calls.
Yeah, I mean that's life in the middle of this league every year, and it's only going to get tougher. If Oklahoma is healthy and operating at a level that we would expect, and if Texas is healthy, I think anyone who sits down and says for sure lead pipe, here are the tiers, really doesn't understand how life in the middle of this league gets.
Yeah.
I mean, Blake, what do we do every year? We're like going to what? 3-team tiebreaker rules routinely every year?
Every year.
For at least a couple every year, for at least 2 seed lines. If you can sit here and say, I know for sure that my team is going to be, top 8. Just wait till the tiebreaker rules get pulled out in Birmingham. And I think that's the hardest part here is, I pick the full slate in June. I do it again in September. I do it in October. I might change in between there 5 or 6 results, and teams will move 2 or 3 slots. Like, it's that fine grained in terms of what can happen when you start really looking at the ripple effects of this stuff. So good luck on anybody that feels like they're going to absolutely nail what the middle of the league is going to look like. Bet for me.
I think it's the same. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think that's going to wrap us up. I think we've, compared to years past, I'm going to consider this a very efficient season preview episode. We still went over an hour, but I think, was it last year or 2 years ago we had to break it into 2 podcasts?
Yeah.
I think it was last year. It's just like, all right, we're just going to have to, there's no way. We're at like team 8 and we're at 90 minutes. Like, let's go. So before we get out of here, for anyone that is unfamiliar with where they can sort of watch and read your stuff, Mr. Lovell, go ahead and tell the folks where they can appreciate your thoughts.
Yes, I appreciate your thoughts on my thoughts. Southeastern 16 on YouTube. You can find us there. We will be doing an SEC basketball eve Sunday night live stream at 8 p.m. Central on Sunday if you want to join us for that. And then pretty much be going live almost every day throughout the season, somewhere along the line to discuss whatever's happening basketball-wise. So, yeah, you can follow us, Southeastern 16, on YouTube and on Twitter/X every now and then these days at the Blake Lovell.
I will say we do have the link to Southeastern 16 in the comments. I was smart enough to kind of get that set up for the live show. So everybody just click there, subscribe. If you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure you're subscribed to that one as well. And then we're also pushing this fun little site, Rock M Plus. Matt Harris and Matt Watkins are doing yeoman's work over there in the forums and putting all kinds of really interesting basketball intelligence on the Mizzou basketball forums. He chuckles as I said intelligence, but I think the industry word is intel, so I just expanded. Rock M Plus, just $5 a month, and you get all that stuff plus more. You can head over to Rock M Plus for all the details. That's going to do it for us. Friday night, we had some good viewership, live show, hour and 10 minutes or so, and I'd like to thank Blake for coming and stopping by once again this year. Maybe one of these days he'll let us come on his channel and yell about the Tigers if they ever talk about them.
Well, we all know that's going to happen this year. So the invite
12 wins.
Is there. So yes.
You have to show up if they're bad too, Sam. That's the rule. You have to show up if they're bad too.
We show up if they're bad. That's the struggle.
It's true.
The struggle is real. All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back. I think the plan is to take all next week off and come back early Sunday or Monday of the following week. So you have to sit that out, but there will be plenty of podcasting going on at Rock M Radio. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Good night. Thank you everyone for tuning in to Rock M Radio, a proud partner of Fans First Sports Network. Rock M Radio is the official podcast network of Rock M Plus, a new and exciting subscription service provided by me and the other voices of Rock M Radio. Please take a few moments to head over to rockm.plus and sign up for an account today. The cost is only $5 a month, and the benefits include access to our live podcast, a subscriber-only message board, weekly newsletters, and more. If you enjoyed this episode of Rock M Radio and would like to see more just like it beamed directly into your personal device, make sure to click the subscribe button below and tell your friends. Our podcast feed is available through the Apple Podcast app for iPhone, Google Podcast app for Android, whatever app you listen to your podcast. You can also find Rock M Radio on Spotify. If you're looking for a podcast about your favorite team that is not the Missouri Tigers, Fan First Sports Network is your answer. A full podcast network loaded with the team-specific podcasts covering Major League Baseball, the NFL, NHL, NBA, MLS, and more. And we'll be back with more episodes of Rock M Radio coming to you soon.